All right, we're here in McCordsville, Indiana at HdB Media. We're gonna go check out the studio with Dan. So I'm here today with Dan Madison from HdB Media. Thanks so much for having us over.
Good to see you again.
Yeah. So I'm excited to do this studio tour for our audience because it's such a cool and unique space that's kind of morphed over time to do different things. And tell a little bit about your background and your company.
Sure. Yeah, I started the business in 2004 in North Carolina, and actually you were part of that because you helped lay out some of the acoustical work in there. And then we moved to Indiana in 2006. I worked for a couple of different companies here doing media production and decided to step out on my own in 2008. And my first employer became my first client. And so I did a lot of video production work, which is what I was doing at the time, for the next 12 years up until about 2020, when we shifted to post audio for film and television.
Oh, that's great. And this space gives you a lot of options. You know, you've got this nice live room that we're in right now, and then you have a control room, a vocal booth. You also have some places you can put amps in if you need to, but it's such a comfortable space too, because it's right off of your house. Like you can just walk over here and short commute, I guess.
It is
what it is. So I love it when you walk into the studio, you enter the live room. It's this beautiful vaulted ceiling that is jack of all trades. You use it for a lot of different things.
Really multi-purpose room.
Yeah.
Whether it's capturing a video shoot, don't do that as much as we used to. More nowadays, it's for foley capture. So we'll capture footsteps or cloth movement or whatever needs to be captured. This is a good room for that because it has a little bit of liveliness to it. Yeah,
I know that was intentional when we did the testing and treatment of the room, was just to make sure that it's controlled enough, because before the treatment it was just
too
a little
noisy.
chaotic, and so it took just the edge off to where now I think it could be used for lots of different things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you have you ever done like full bands in here? I know that's not like your main
more
thing,
like an acoustic set.
Okay.
Just because drums can be a little bit tough. A little bit too loud at times, but we do sometimes capture them, as you can see. That's why they're out. So it gives it a very live feel.
Yeah, very nice. I think the fact that it's got a large volume too. It's not only the space itself, but it's open to the hallway going down there, and so I think low frequencies sound really great in here. It's not too boomy like some of the smaller rooms, smaller isolation rooms would offer.
But good amount of space.
And so when you do Foley work in here, like you just set up anywhere, and
it's fun because we have the wooden floor, but there's also carpets I can move around. So depending upon what the shot is, what the person's wearing, we might change what the flooring is. But the wood comes in super handy. There's also some tile out here we can use too. So,
Was that, now I know that the Foley work kind of came later. Was that
later.
Intentional, or
it was not? It was a happy accident.
When you originally contacted me about this, like you had already, the space planning was done, construction was done. We were called in to do more of just the interior acoustical treatments. But
that's right.
I want to talk a little bit about that process of designing this space. You and your wife had done that.
Yes.
But what were some of the challenges that you came across?
Well, at the time I had no knowledge of acoustical layout or how any of that worked, and there were some pretty strong needs for some acoustical help in these rooms. Even though we designed them, I think, well, they still needed to be tamed and treated so they could be used for what they were intended for.
So far it's built and constructed, but the thing that we need to do now is to figure out where the acoustical issues lie, and that's why I'm here.
You had called me to come in to do the treatment portion of things, and the first thing we did is I came and took acoustical measurements, and so we set up microphones in each room, and we tried to define the problem and see what we needed to do to solve it. And we actually have a bunch of footage from that. Since you do video production, we have young Gavin going around and moving microphones and taking a laser distance finder and measuring out the room so we can model them properly. But that's always a fun process because it reveals a lot of things. You know, you can acoustically model a room all you want and get pretty close these days with the software that we have, but nothing takes the place of just real world measurements, and you see like where are the deficiencies, like what type of frequency issues or reflection points that we have to deal with, and so that was a fun trip to be able to do that and get that information, and then after that, we put together a plan, you know, of what to do. And what we ended up doing in here was we decided to just treat the walls. Like, we didn't do anything on the ceiling. And so we ended up using these 2-inch thick fabric covered fiberglass panels from Acoustical Fulfillment. And then what we did in order to increase the mid and low frequency absorption, use these 2-inch offset and paling clips, and creates that little air gap. Not only does it help acoustically, but I think it helps aesthetically because it gives us some shadow to them.
There's more depth.
Yeah. And you've shot video in here as well.
We have. We've actually used these in the background.
Yeah, it's real nice for that. But yeah, we kind of staggered them on opposite walls so that panels aren't directly across from panels.
Exactly.
And help with that flutter echo that was occurring in here before. But other than that, I think we did talk about doing ceiling treatment at one point.
We did, and I'm sort of glad we didn't do that now because of what it's used for now.
Right. And so, you know, right now, you know, you did a lot of isolation in here, and you've got this solid brick wall, which again shows up great for video too, but it also adds a little bit of diffusion since it's not just a hard, flat surface. Did you build this one a room within a room, or is it share the exterior joists?
No, there's actually a space in between the ceiling and the roof.
Okay.
There's a gap there. I think it's about a 2-foot gap.
Yeah.
And it's insulated, so that does help cut down on rain noise, anything outside.
Any airplanes or anything
Airplanes,
that goes over.
trains.
Yeah. No, that's great. And then, you know, kind of going down this hallway, I guess first stop over here on the right, you've got a storage room.
Yeah, this is actually kind of an interesting room. We built it's a concrete room of sorts, so it's 12 inches of concrete all the way around. And we have a server in there, so it's protected. All my archives for projects are kept on that server. So in theory, if we got hit by a tornado and everything was wiped out, there'd be this one little tiny room left with what's important.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so you got all the gear in here, and then, oh, it's locked.
Yeah, it's locked, sorry.
I can't get in. When you were building this house, were you thinking about building the studio at the same time, or was it an addition?
No, the plan was to build the studio initially, but we had a first thought we would build a separate building to walk to and work in. And our builder was the one that suggested, well, why don't we just put the garage in the middle and connect it? And so my commute is through the garage now, which I love, especially in the winter, but it works out well. Man,
I would love to have a space like this just a few steps from my house. You know, it's probably pretty nice. And I'm sure too, like, and you have a son who's 17 now, and like when he was younger, I bet it's nice just to be able to walk back over for lunch or do anything like that.
Be able to be close to your family and but still have the separation you need to get work done when you need to.
Right. So let's go check out the control room.
Yeah, come on in.
So with this whole process of building a studio, is there anything you would have done differently?
Yeah, I think when we started, I didn't have the concept or notion that I'd be moving into surround sound mixing for film eventually, which is what I primarily do now, a lot of 5.1 mixing. And so working with the screen, the monitors on the desk in relation to the center, left and right, and even your left and right surrounds, those monitors themselves, the screens, are flat surfaces. And so trying to work out where those need to be can be a little bit difficult when you've got a center speaker right in the middle. And I think if I could go back, I would have maybe had a different desk or figured out a way to have the screens lower to look at, that sort of thing. We've been able to work around it fine, and I know what frequencies to watch out for.
Sure.
But that would have been something I would have thought through differently.
Sometimes we're even doing it as a big projection screen that's acoustically transparent that the speakers can live behind. Right. You know, but it's always a topic of consideration.
Yeah.
But I think what you've done is great in there with adding the 5.1 and you know, the room. It's easy to convert it to 5.1 if the room already sounds good.
Yes.
You know,
and that part was simple.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we've got some clouds and wall panels from Acoustical Fulfillment in here to handle first reflection points and do some bass trapping as well. But then we've got diffusers on the ceiling and on the back wall from MSR Acoustics.
That's right.
Really kind of unique looking diffusers that got the kind of pyramid shape to them in alternating fashions, and they do a good job at scattering sound.
Yeah.
It's important in a room like this. You don't want it to sound so dead that you don't want to be in here. I mean, you're in here for long hours, and you want to make sure that it sounds natural.
There's some life to it.
Yeah. So I think treatment in here does a really good job of just balancing out the frequencies without
They look cool too, I think.
They look cool too. Yeah, I mean that is a thing with acoustical treatment. You know, it's not just functional. It's something that creates a aesthetic that you and a vibe in the room that you want. So.
Yep.
It also has this nice riser here in the back that you've got your kind of producer desk with some equipment in it, but then
that's right.
The riser is nice to be able to have anyone sitting up here to be able to witness what you're doing.
Exactly. And sometimes if we have a director or producer in, we'll put a screen here on the table.
Okay.
Not too large, just big enough where they can sit there and actually see the film in front of them.
Oh, nice.
And that's something we can plug right into here if we need to.
Yeah, it kind of goes both ways with control room. You want it large enough to be able to reproduce low frequencies accurately, but then it's also the place everyone wants to hang out in.
Exactly.
So it's like you need the space, and this
balance.
This kind of hangout area in the back is awesome.
Yeah.
You got a few amps mic'd up back here as well.
That's right.
And you can track those in the space. What some of your favorite pieces of gear that you have?
Sure. I mean, I work in Pro Tools primarily, so it's software. It's on the old trash can Mac Pro, which is about in need of replacement.
Sure.
But all of the gear primarily came through Sweetwater. That's where we purchased it over the years. You've got the Pro Tools hardware, Coleman volume control. There's a lot of different mic pre-options over here you can see. And, you know, I use that at times if we record music on occasion. It might be like a small band or an acoustic set, then we can tap into the Focusrites and use those too. Nice. So it's a good mixture of things I need. And in all honesty, most of what I do with film and television though is in the box. So it's a lot of plugins,
sure.
You know, and vocal aligning things for ADR and that sort of thing. So
yeah,
mostly internal.
Okay. Have you always worked on Genelecs?
I have, since the beginning actually. And the original left and rights we purchased back in 2004. They've been with us a long time. Yeah. And then we added the center and the left surround and right surround.
Nice.
The past 5 years.
Yeah. Genelec just makes amazing speakers.
I love them.
Translate super well.
I'm used to it and I love how they sound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk about isolation a little bit. Like what kind of things did you put in place to try to ensure, I guess when you first built it, there wasn't a whole lot of things around you.
Right.
And now that there is more, the city has kind of grown.
It has.
You know, what kind of construction techniques did you implement?
We did. Everything is built 2x8 construction and insulated with, I think it's called blown-in blanket insulation.
Yeah.
BIB, if I remember. And it does a great job. Nothing's perfect at the low frequencies. That can be tough. But a lot of construction is going on around us now. It used to be farmland.
Right.
And so a lot of homes are going up, which is great. You know, it's good to see the economy is booming here at least. But the noise can be a battle sometimes. But I think making the thicker walls, most of these rooms that we're in are separated by air gaps. So there's room for the sound to dissipate before it gets in here. And so I don't experience hardly any issues when mixing, thankfully.
Nice thing too is that I know you spent a lot of time in the control room, and that one's insulated even more because it's in the interior of the building. It doesn't have an exterior wall, except maybe the back wall. Is the back wall exterior?
Even that is separate too. There's a really narrow hallway you can walk through back there and use it for storage, but it separates from outside.
And then just right off the control room, you've got this vocal booth, which is great sight lines to be able to, when you're working with talent, I'm sure that's helpful.
It does help, yeah. Sometimes we'll use this room for ADR. And so I might put a screen up on the wall where they can actually see, you know, themselves in the scene that they were in, and they have to match their dialogue. So that's something we'll use it for on occasion.
Very nice. Yeah, this room is obviously a lot more controlled. It's higher percentage of absorption panels in here, but then we have a combination of acoustical fulfillment fulfill panels on the walls, and then in the corners we have these big bass traps from Dual Acoustics, which unfortunately they're not in business anymore. I used to spec them out around 2013 when we did this project. I did a lot of that because they made really great performing products that handled well into low frequency range and weren't very expensive, you know, like then. So they do a really good job. And you know, you picked the same anchorage fabric that the wall panels were, just in a different color, and it, you know, the black and brown color scheme works really nice with the whole flow of the room.
It does.
So you work with a lot of clients that will come into this space and do ADR and other things. What's their experience like? What do they think when they walk a few steps from your house and you have this?
I think it's a good balance between being a studio, but also feeling kind of, I hate to use the word homey, but it feels comfortable.
Yes.
You know, and so a lot of clients will comment on, oh, I feel like I'm just at home here, you know, and some of that is, a lot of it's my wife's doing in the design and layout and color scheme and everything. But it's we try to make it a hosting environment for people so they don't feel like they're walking into a corporate facility, you know, that's cold and stark.
Right.
But yeah, that's my key. And I think also just as a personality, you want to be comforting to people and provide them a safe place to come and do whatever artwork they're doing and not feel like they're on a stage, you know, per se.
And I feel that when I walk in here, it just feels like a place you want to hang out here.
Relax.
You want to, you know, be creative. I'm sure, because that's a big part of like people's process, is that if they're in an environment where they're not comfortable, it's going to come across in the performance. You know,
especially with ADR, dialogue replacement, because getting the actor to return to that place that their character was in the scene is a very difficult process. And so it involves usually having a director present or phoned in to try to help them not just time their lines to match, but also be emotionally in the same place that they were in the scene. And that's the most difficult part. So I think if you can provide that in an environment, that's a big part of it.
Yeah, and then you got the nice like kitchenette down here at the end.
Yeah, so if we have clients, we have a little kitchen area with coffee and snacks and that sort of thing. And then bathroom, last door on the right, and more storage here behind you too.
You never have enough storage in the studio.
There's never enough room.
Yeah. How long of a process do you remember from when you started the construction of this to being finished?
To finishing. Yeah. Longer than it should have taken, but you know, it was basically about 9 months.
Okay.
We always joke about it's like a pregnancy, you know, it took 9 months.
Right.
But it was done right, and I was out here a lot for it, which I'm sure the construction guys got tired of, but hey, it was fun.
It's nice to have oversight on that because, you know, a lot of times contractors build these places, they've never built it before.
Right.
You know what you're looking for.
Exactly.
And they probably do too, but you know, when it's something that's out of the norm, it just takes a little bit more, you know, close attention to detail.
It does, because this was new territory for our builder. He hadn't done anything like a studio before, maybe a home theater, but so being here and being able to talk to him and work through, this is what we need. I think it was actually enjoyable for him and the guys working because it was something completely different. Right. You know, to do.
Yeah, I'm sure some of the projects they work on, it's just like, you almost feel like you could do it in your sleep. You know, it's like it's the same thing over and over again. So when you get plans for something that's just out of the ordinary, you really focus in.
Right.
What was your experience like when you went from, because you worked in these spaces for a while without the treatment, and then suddenly you had treatment. Like, what was the big change?
It was night and day. I mean, because when I first started, I think we were here about 3 or 4 months before you came in and we designed everything. And there were a lot of modes, a lot of things going on in the rooms that were distracting, especially at the time. I was primarily working in video production, so mostly sound for video at that time. But it was really difficult to get a good read on what I'm actually hearing because of the way things were bouncing off the walls.
Right.
And now it transfers so well, so clear.
That's awesome. I think that especially for what you're doing, because you're doing a lot of soundscapes and ambience for movies and films, and you have to hear all those details. Like it's got to be really clear and discernible from different frequency ranges and how it all sits together to sound natural.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a lot of detail, and especially with post audio for film, you know, even just like you said, creating the ambience. It might be a cricket chirping in the corner or something, so you need to be able to hear that clearly and not be influenced by things bouncing off the walls.
Sure.
So
yeah, because anytime you have a room that is imbalanced on the frequency spectrum, like you could have certain sounds that are masking what's going on in the mids and highs, like say low frequency sounds that are too boomy and extend too long in the reverb tail, then you miss all those other details. And yeah, so you really want everything, like always with film, I always say that like if you have a nice home theater or wherever you're watching something, you want to make sure that when that explosion hits, you don't miss the dialogue that happens right after it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? So having a nice balanced room, I'm sure helps with that.
It's tremendous. Oh, in the storage room, I probably should have told you before you tried to open it. It opens best if I put my hand on it.
Oh, really?
Somehow
Is it like figure?
It knows me, so.
Wait a second. That's not fair.
Yeah, you know, it's.
Well, there's the concrete shelter. Well, Dan, thanks again for having us here. You know, it's always fun to come back and see the space, and it was just so cool to hear how your business has evolved and how you're using the space differently. And yeah, it's just a joy to be here. So thank you.
Thanks for coming.